Hello, today we are presenting the results of our recent survey about understanding librarian support of open pedagogy. Before we go any further, I would like to briefly introduce ourselves and where we work. The authors of the survey and today's presenters are myself, Kathleen Anderson. I manage the Research Help Services at the main library at the University of Nevada, Reno. Elena Azadbakht is the Health Sciences Librarian, and Teresa Schultz is the Scholarly Communications and Social Sciences Librarian. The survey's focus is to understand what academic librarians think about and are doing to support open pedagogy in credit-bearing courses at higher education institutions. To make sure we are on the same page in defining open pedagogy, here is a definition from the University of Texas at Arlington Libraries that aptly describes open pedagogy. Open pedagogy is the practice of engaging with students as creators of information rather than simply consumers of it. It's a form of experiential learning in which students demonstrate understanding through the act of creation. The products of open pedagogy are student-created and openly licensed so that they may live outside of the classroom in a way that has an impact on the greater community. Others have successfully charted the connections between open pedagogy and information literacy in case studies. In these studies, they documented specific examples of how librarians are using OpenPed in their classes. For example, the librarians are supporting students in editing Wikipedia pages, producing multimodal projects on social media platforms, transcribing historical documents, and creating research guides, textbooks, and technical manuals. Along with documenting librarian support of open pedagogy, these case studies often discuss various connections between open pedagogy and information literacy. Two of us published our own case study on their work in open pedagogy, and in researching that project, we realized there was a need to look more broadly at the topic of librarian support of open pedagogy in the United States and Canada, as little existed apart from individual case studies in the scholarly literature. To give you a clearer idea of our survey's approach, I will share the research questions we sought to answer. First, what do librarians who work in instruction and/or educational resources think about supporting open pedagogy at their institutions? Second, what role do librarians who work in instruction and/or open educational resources play in supporting open pedagogy at their institutions? And finally, what factors affect their views of roles in supporting open pedagogy? Regarding methodology, the project used a survey created in Qualtrics to help answer the research questions. The survey was designed with 4 broad sections. The first one focused on gathering basic background information about the participants and their institutions, as well as how comfortable respondents were with OP. We also asked about institutional support, such as whether their institution provided any support for the broader umbrella of open education and whether their library supported their own work in open pedagogy. We then asked whether they have supported open pedagogy in a higher education course. We also asked separate questions based on whether respondents had or had not supported open pedagogy in a credit-bearing course yet. The survey was open to any active academic librarian in the United States or Canada who currently works in library instruction and/or open education. We opted to focus on these 2 areas of librarianship as the most likely to support OP. The survey ran for about 40 days this summer. We posted the survey on 9 library listservs, focused on instruction and/or open education. 208 respondents began the survey. 15 did not meet the inclusion criteria, and 48 did not complete the survey, leaving 145 respondents to complete the survey. None of the questions required an answer, so some have fewer than 145. As expected, there were some limitations. It is likely self-selection bias affected participation in the survey, which could mean an overrepresentation of librarians who have supported or are at least interested in or aware of open pedagogy. Some respondents might also have not felt comfortable in sharing their views on open pedagogy, even in an anonymous survey, which could mean the survey undercounts those with more negative views toward library work in OP. The survey also did not receive enough responses for more in-depth analysis to determine what relationship might exist between the dependent and independent variables. As we present the survey results, we discovered answers to the research questions and, no surprise, new questions we are curious about, and Teresa will discuss those.
We'll start with the results of the questions that we asked all participants, and we should note that these are just preliminary results. When looking at the type of institutions our respondents represent, there was a majority of people who work at large, research-focused public universities. About a third of respondents did come from private universities, although none came from for-profit organizations, which we did ask about. A majority, 57%, came from institutions that offered doctoral degrees as their highest degree, followed by a master's with 17%, associates with 14%, and bachelor's at 12%. We saw a spread of respondents across institutions by size of enrollment, with 44% coming from institutions with more than 10,000 students, although our second largest group, 23%, came from institutions with 2,000 to 5,000 students. As far as participants' backgrounds in instruction and open education librarianship, most of our respondents work in both areas to some extent, whether as a core or secondary role. Only 12 respondents did not report working in instruction at all, and only 24 did not work in open education. More respondents, about 2/3, also reported library instruction as a core work area, versus those who reported open education as a core work area, about 1/3. Unsurprisingly, a large portion of our respondents have worked in libraries for more than 5 years, which was similar for how long respondents reported working specifically in library instruction. 75% reported working in librarianship for more than 5 years, and 66% reported working in instruction for the same time period. There was more variability with how long they had worked in open education, as only a little more than a third reported having worked in open education for more than 5 years, and the largest group, 42%, reported having worked in open education for only up to a year. We were interested in whether institutional support for the broader world of open education was connected to librarian support of open pedagogy. Looking at the graph on the left, 69% of respondents reported having some level of institutional support for the broader world of open education, whether it came from local government, the wider institution, or their own library. The library was the most common source of support for open education of the specific areas, with 48% selecting this option, followed by university support, 34%, and then government support at 22%. Respondents could select as many of the options that applied. When looking at support for their own work in open pedagogy specifically, only 1% said their library discouraged it, although 43% said their library was neutral. That means 57% of libraries actively support work in open pedagogy in some way, with some saying it's a requirement of their role. When it comes to participants' own opinions of open pedagogy, 63% said they were either somewhat or very comfortable with open pedagogy. We define somewhat comfortable as being knowledgeable about open pedagogy and/or beginning to work in open pedagogy. We define very comfortable as knowing about it and providing significant support for open pedagogy. Only 5% said they were not comfortable at all with open pedagogy, which we defined as not being aware of it. A large majority also reported seeing a connection between open pedagogy and the ACRL framework for information literacy. 57% said they thought open pedagogy connected to 4 or more of the frames, and 38% said they thought it connected to 2 or 3. Just 2% thought it connected to only one frame, and again, another 2% thought open pedagogy did not connect to any frames. We do need to acknowledge an error in the survey here, as there was no answer option for 6 frames. However, we've chosen to interpret the answer option of 4 to 5 frames as including all frames. We then asked about their thoughts on resources supporting librarians working in open pedagogy. 39% said they are not aware of resources that support this work, and just 21% of all respondents thought available resources were adequate. Respondents were next asked what they would like to see the most in such resources and could choose up to 3. The most requested topics included examples of open pedagogy assignments, 48%, examples of roles that the librarians have played in open pedagogy, 43%, and best practices for open pedagogy, 37%. How to talk to faculty about open pedagogy and showing how open pedagogy connects to the ACRL framework, 33% each, were also common responses. How to advocate for OP with the library and how to find funding were the least common responses. Finally, we also asked all respondents what were the top 3 barriers they faced in working in open pedagogy. The top 2 responses were lack of time, 54%, and competing priorities, 53%, which are often connected. Lack of interest from faculty was the third most popular answer at 44%. Only 3 people chose their own lack of interest as a barrier, and just 13, or 9%, said lack of support from their library or supervisor was a barrier. In terms of how many of our respondents have already supported open pedagogy in some way in a credit-bearing course, more than half, 57%, said they have. That's compared to just under a third who have not. We did provide an option for people who were not sure, which 12% of respondents chose. We assumed that those who were not sure had not actually supported OP and counted them with the no's, meaning 43% have not. We also directed these people to questions for those who have not supported OP for the rest of the survey. We wanted to see if we could determine any potential correlations between some of our independent variables and 2 dependent variables, how comfortable our respondents were with open pedagogy, and whether our respondents had ever supported open pedagogy in a course. Because of our small sample size, we opted to use Fisher's exact test instead of the chi-square test. For both dependent variables, we found that the independent variables where p was less than 0.05 were whether the respondent worked in open education, how long they had worked in open education, whether their institution provided any type of support for open education, and whether their library supported their work in open pedagogy in some way. Other independent variables we looked at included how long they had worked in library instruction, type of institution, highest degree offered by their institution, and student enrollment. None of these other independent variables were found to be significant.
Using skip logic, we split the respondents into 2 groups, based on whether they had done any open pedagogy work or not. We asked each set of respondents different questions. As Teresa noted, we grouped those who said they hadn't done any OP work and those who said they weren't sure if they had together. About 43% of respondents fell into this category. We asked this subset of respondents if they are interested in supporting OP and if they feel ready if an instructor asks for OP support. 68 of those who answered, 1 didn't respond, said that they were interested. 32% said that they might be interested. No one said that they were not interested. As for their sense of their own readiness, 43% said that they feel ready, and 57% said that they didn't feel ready. We also gave them the space to expand upon their response to the question of whether or not they are interested in supporting OP. They cite several different concerns here, some of which echo the barriers to doing open pedagogy Teresa discussed earlier, such as training, time, compensation, and institutional support, or the lack of these things. Here are some of their responses. I am an advocate of open access to research articles and other materials. I am not sure how open pedagogy ties into that. It would depend on what was involved. Haven't had the opportunity at my current job, but have had some secondary experience in a previous role. I'm currently part of an instruction team that has just started on promoting OER, and I hope to gain more knowledge on the subject as time progresses. I'm interested as long as my work is compensated appropriately. It takes considerable skill and work and is not in my job description. I need more hands-on experience. As of yet, no one has taken me up on this. Now let's look at those who have done open pedagogy work. This group represented about 57% of the total number of respondents. We asked this subset of respondents how many classes they have supported, what role they've played in any class when supporting OP, with a list of possible roles to choose from, if they have ever initiated the use of OP in the classes they've worked with, what they identified as positive outcomes of supporting OP, with a list of outcomes to choose from, and if they would support OP in another class if given the opportunity. As you can see from this figure, most respondents, 76%, reported supporting 3 or more courses, which we found promising. When we asked them how they've supported open pedagogy in the classroom, we gave them multiple choices to choose from. The most common roles they said they've played were supporting the course instructor's learning of OP, 67%, helping to develop lessons or assignments, 55%, creating asynchronous learning objects, 49%, providing library instruction sessions, 46%, and supporting the creation of OER, 38%. Whereas serving as an instructor of record for the course, 15%, and helping with assessment, 10%, weren't often roles these respondents reported taking on. We asked if they initiated the use of open pedagogy, a slight majority, 53%, said that they had initiated the use of OP at their own choosing. Another 43% said that the instructor or someone else outside of the library approached them about OP, and only around 4% said that their use of OP was at the prompting of someone else within the library, such as a colleague or supervisor. We then asked respondents what they thought were the top 3 positive outcomes, the benefits of their engagement in open pedagogy. The most selected choices were that OP empowered students as information creators, 59%, reduced costs to students, 39%, promoted the library and librarians as classroom instruction partners, 38%, further equity and inclusion work, 35%, and helped improve the librarian's relationship with the instructor, 34%. However, fewer respondents chose the outcomes of developing as a librarian, 6%, or becoming better integrated into the course, 5%. No one said there were no benefits. The vast majority, 95% to be exact, said that they would support open pedagogy in another course in the future. We also gave them the space to expand upon the response to this question. There were a lot of mentions of OP being an effective means of engaging students and developing working relationships with faculty. They also cite its educational and financial benefits. Their comments reflect what they identified as being the main benefits of OP in the previous question. Here are some example responses. It's critical for student learning. Equity and inclusion are vital to education. I think it is valuable and expands what the library is able to do as a support partner. I have found it to be a great professional experience and to be an effective way of relationship building with faculty. It engages students. Feedback from instructors and students has been positive. Supporting a co-creative classroom dynamic is empowering to students and instructors alike. Based on the results we've presented here, some key takeaways we've identified regarding the role of academic librarians in open pedagogy are: librarians doing this work seem pretty positive about it and cite several beneficial outcomes of OP. Also, most librarians engaged in open pedagogy have worked with multiple classes, and it's not just the librarians advocating for OP. Faculty often initiate OP in the classroom and look to librarians for support. Unsurprisingly, those who work in open education seem to be more familiar with and comfortable incorporating OP into their work. But these results are likely affected by selection bias, so more work is needed to really understand librarians' feelings on OP overall. However, although these librarians overwhelmingly want to continue doing this kind of work, barriers do exist, as we saw earlier. Likewise, librarians who are not involved in OP seem willing to give it a try, but need more training in order to feel truly comfortable with it. There appears to be no relationship between the size or type of institution and librarians' involvement in OP, which suggests that it can be adapted to a number of different contexts and settings, and that its many-sided benefits can potentially be felt by students all over. But our results suggest institutional and library support does matter, or is correlated with open pedagogy work, which makes a certain amount of sense. If you're not given the resources or the time to do OP, then you're probably not going to get very involved in it. Based on our responses overall, it's clear that we need more and better training and resources. Many respondents weren't even aware of existing resources, which means they need to be better and more widely promoted to librarians involved in instruction in particular. Additionally, while many of our participants do see a connection between open pedagogy and the framework, a significant portion seem to see this connection as limited or minimal, which is interesting. A major benefit to engaging with OP cited was improving students' information literacy skills, which contrasts with this finding. This is something that could be explored further in the future. Because one way of gaining wider librarian support for OP, if that is our aim, could be to make this connection with information literacy and the framework clearer. Maybe this connection between the two could be highlighted in descriptions of lessons and classroom activities librarians are using. And here are our references. That's all we have for you today, but we intend to go over the results of our survey in a paper we are currently writing, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. And please reach out to us with any questions. Here are our email addresses if you're unable to get in touch with us at the conference itself. Thank you.